Daniel Kading, thanks for joining me, man. You're in Colorado, I think. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Northern Colorado, north of Denver.
Yeah. Go Nuggets.
Yeah, right. Denver got destroyed, like physically speaking. I had a
I was going to ask actually if you're a basketball guy, but
no,
yeah,
I'm not. I'm not into
stuff.
sports at all. Yeah, but I'm stoked the Nuggets did well finally, and my buddy Pat was down there sending me Snapchats of all the chaos, and he was just in absolute heaven. He's such a sports guy, but yeah, it looked like a mess. I mean, the whole
Right
city got trampled on. I'm sure they didn't even know what to do.
Nice to see, something to celebrate for sure. Daniel, I usually start. My first question is just about always to ask my guests to tell the story of how we met. And this all came together very, very quickly. So I'm interested, like I would call this a social media success story. So tell me the story of how we met.
Yeah. So I saw the Pope, as I call him, but Stephen G. Pope. I've been following him. I feel like I'm one of the OG fans of that guy. And I remember when he first got started creating content, and it seemed as though he, back then he had a whole different approach, and now he's just the automation machine. And yeah, so I saw you pop up talking to him, and I immediately commented, and I was like, I know this guy. I'm just, you're talking to the Pope. Nice. I feel like it was meant to be. I think I commented on your stuff. You commented back. I said, if you'd like to have me on the show, please let me know. I'd love to come on. I like to come on podcasts as much as I can. I feel like I'm in that same sort of category of, creator where I really want to go in front of new audiences and find new people to talk to and just share my insights. I love chatting with people. I'm big on conversation and communication and trying to share new ideas. And I'm not as cool as Steven with the camera set up in all the corners. And, he sends it off to his Airtable and it starts clipping everything out. That stuff overwhelms me. As much as I love hearing his insights, I'm like, I could never do that. In my head, I'm like, I have to keep it super simple. But yeah, and then you hit me up with I told you to DM me. You said send me your email, and bam, here we are. So
like yesterday,
yeah, like yesterday. Yeah,
on TikTok, everybody.
TikTok. I was emailing my wife like, will this work? Do we have time for this? And she's like, yeah, we can make it work. Let's do it. So I'm always throwing random questions at her like that.
Thank you for making the time. This is super cool. And I confess I'm not the most active TikToker in the world, but when I open the app, it's your face I see, man. Like you were one of the first guys, and you're talking about what I think is interesting is that you talk about content on LinkedIn, but you're talking about it on TikTok. Like clearly you lead with the TikTok editing approach to things, but you're talking about thought leadership on LinkedIn. Why TikTok?
Yeah, I got started on TikTok. I mean, if you go back and look at my first video, it's the cringiest thing ever. And of course, I'm going to keep it up because I want people to see that process. And if they want, they can see how bad I used to be. But I got started with TikTok like 2 years ago, I think. And I just really wanted to expand into video and figure out what that was all about. I really felt intrigued by the short form format. And of course, the organic algorithm that it used to be. I don't really feel like it's very organic anymore. But I enjoyed the whole editing. I was already using GIFs and sharing GIFs on LinkedIn. So I started to incorporate GIFs into my videos and really started to have a lot of fun with the music. I mean, there's nothing like putting together a video and actually being able to clip it correctly, which was like the hardest thing ever in the beginning. Now they have tools like Descript and stuff like that. But and then once you put that music in there and you hear your voice to the rhythm of a nice Pete Rock instrumental or something like that, to me, that is just so much fun. And all of a sudden you feel like you're, like creating your own rap album or something like that. And I just love that. And of course, sharing it on LinkedIn. A lot of times my content doesn't do that well on TikTok, but if I put it on LinkedIn, I'll probably get, 3, 4, 5 times the reach with that audience. And since it's designed to perform well, in a perfect world on TikTok, it does really well on LinkedIn. And I guess for me, it's like, I don't want to be I don't want to be a one-trick pony either. I want to be able to do video. I want to be able to put captions. I want to be able to do all the fancy editing, and also say, yeah, I did that. I used, CapCut, and I put the video together myself, and I picked the sound and everything else. So I think part of me I don't want to be just that guy that writes content on LinkedIn and only does written. I want to be able to do some video. And I also did work for two creative agencies that do video and short form specifically. So I do feel like I've been in that world to a degree. I left those companies, but I did learn a lot, and I do see the value of having that short form content. So, but yeah, I guess for me, it's just a natural progression of being a creative and being a creator myself, and wanting to flex my muscles in a whole new area. That was mostly the motivation for it.
I think I can relate to that a little bit because I've been a social media guy for a long time, but I think of TikTok as kind of like the editing tool almost, or the format, and then all of these other places that I share my stuff. I mean, it doesn't even get prepared on TikTok, but that's the approach, right? The closed captions on screen and the fast cuts, and like I think just about everybody's using Descript, and I'm going to come back to that. Let's go deep into what it is that you do. So one of the things you talk about, like you're a ghostwriter for other thought leaders and influencers and personal brands. And I hear you talk a lot about sharing personal details about yourself as part of the content that you share. Why do you think that's important? And what advice do you have specifically, like, because we both deal with SaaS founders, why do you think that's important for SaaS founders to do? And maybe speak to like why they might be nervous about that and do it anyway.
Yeah, I was working for this company, and we had a fitness influencer who was creating all kinds of content on TikTok, and he kept coming to me and complaining to me about how he was losing 100, 200, 300 followers per week, and his content was still doing pretty well. He was probably getting around 1,000 views, maybe upwards of 3,000 per video, and I kept coming back to him and saying, like, look, I don't know what to tell you, but it feels as if there's a lack of depth on your page. You are a bunch of fitness hacks, and that's great. And those things do create top of funnel, engagement. And I mean, not even top of funnel, that's more bottom funnel. And, you're speaking directly to your target audience of people that want to work with you. And I think that's great. But I feel like you're not sharing enough of who you are and what makes you interesting. And if you did more of that, I think you would have a lot more success on your page. Now, he never took my advice, but and I imagine he might still be losing followers, but hey, you can't help everybody. And so I always bring up this story, because as in that specific demographic, if you're a fitness person, as soon as someone stops pursuing their fitness goals, and they just decide, you know what, I'm going to do something else, or I'm going to take a different route, they have no reason to keep following you. But if you're a person that has a deep story, that you share your journey as an entrepreneur, you talk about your past of, the guy told me in our meetings that he had been bullied a lot in high school, and, all these different things that are super relatable. He wasn't willing to share them, though, because he felt uncomfortable with the whole idea of it, I imagine. And I think a lot of SaaS founders, I think a lot of personal brands are very unwilling to actually create a personal brand. And they're very unwilling to actually go the route of sharing some of those details about who they are. And so there's this guy I follow on YouTube, and I always like to bring him up in situations like this, but his name is Foresty Forrest. He lives in a van, and he is up in Canada and Alberta, BC. He travels all over the place up there. And I don't have any particular interest in van life, but when I first started following him, that's what I was interested in. And now he does all kinds of stuff. He goes on hikes and everything else. And it's like, I could seriously care less, because I'm so invested in his personal story, because I fell in love with his personality as time went on. And so every single time his video hits my feed, without a doubt, I'm clicking on that video, because I want to check in on Forrest. I want to know how he's doing. I want to see what his journey is, encompassing. And so it moves beyond that phase of you just having someone who wants to, milk you for all you're worth when it comes to your knowledge. And it actually creates a human connection. And that connection goes so much further than the content that you're able to create. And I think that sort of breaks through that barrier in a lot of cases. So for like SaaS founders, yeah, you have an amazing product. You're building software, like it solves a specific purpose for a horizontal group of people, say something like HubSpot, or you're working with real estate agents and you're helping them sign more titles more quickly, and you have a very niche demographic. That's great. But what about you? What about the journey you're on? What about how you bootstrapped your company? What about how you didn't get funding, or you did get funding? What it was like to go into your first meeting and have to figure out how to convince this VC or whoever it is to actually give you money. Those are interesting stories. And then going back to your family, and I talk about how my parents were both entrepreneurs, and that inspired me to become an entrepreneur. I'm a skateboarder, so I'm very community driven. I'm all about responding to DMs and chatting it up with people and offering my support. And I started out my life as a slam poet and a performance writer, and that helps inform my copywriting skills. And so I think our past is much more connected to our current than we're willing to admit a lot of the time. And I think that there's a certain level of magic to that. So to answer your question in a long drawn out way, I think it just adds depth to your personal brand and actually gives people a reason to stick around, even if they no longer need your content specifically. Like at the end of the day, it's going back to Stephen, going back to the Pope, I've been following his journey since the beginning, and he's been showing up for me and I've been showing up for him. And even if I get completely overwhelmed by his automation details out the wazoo, I'm still here for Stephen. I'm still clicking that like button. I'm still going to listen in on what he's talking about and get excited about what he has happening, because I'm invested in that journey. So that's sort of my answer to that.
Mm-hmm. It's time and again, I see people like vulnerability performing really well on LinkedIn. And I think it's because humans like dealing with humans.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned some of the ways that some of the influences that on your copywriting, and I want to talk about the writing specifically. I have two writing questions for you. The first is about direct response copywriting. So we talked about, top of funnel or whatever, but when it comes to like people taking an action and that direct response piece, first of all, help us understand what direct response copywriting is and your approach to it.
Yeah, I hope I'm fully qualified to answer this question, but I think that in the world of direct response, you want to engage somebody in actually taking some form of action. A lot of people think it means buy right now, but sometimes it could mean follow you. It could mean shoot you a DM and start a conversation. It could be subscribe to my YouTube channel. It could be share this piece of content. It could be check out my free product and see what you think of it. So I think that direct response could mean a lot of different things, but it means you're driving someone to take some form of action through your copy, to my knowledge. And I think and some of the nuances of it for me is that it doesn't necessarily have to lead to a sale right now. I think that just getting people to engage with your brand and actually take some sort of action towards becoming a part of your circle of influence is a win in my book. And so, especially in the world of social media, if we only focus on creating a sale with every single post we put out there, people are going to become super bored really quickly, and they're probably going to feel that sales breath floating off that copy every single time it gets posted. So a lot of times it could be I just went to a summit that I did recently, and Richard Vanderblom, I think I'm saying that right, he's one of the biggest names on LinkedIn. He was talking about a call to think and a call to think and a call to consider. And I always like to talk about calls to conversation, where it's like, let me share this amazing insight, and I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced this, or has anyone you've ever known experienced this? What was the outcome? Or, ask an open-ended question so it's not too specific. And then you can actually drive that conversation and that dialogue. And in a place like LinkedIn, that's incredibly useful. And that actually boosts that content further, gets it in front of new audiences, and so on and so forth. So, but I think at the core of it, you have to touch on the pain points. You have to be willing to have empathy for your audience and know what it is that they're specifically struggling with, and call that out in that copy in some sort of way that doesn't feel salesy. It feels very human. And then that's usually what will drive an action, because a lot of times, people talk about how we're less likely to act on positive things in our life and much more likely to act on preserving something. Like if you say, something's going to be taken away from someone, they're a lot more likely to jump on it than they are to add something new to their list of things in their life. I'm not saying that very articulately, but yeah, I think that's usually the main thing, is to press on that pain point and to give someone an opportunity to act on it.
Okay. All right. Now, taking a look at TikTok again specifically, and presumably you script your stuff in advance. So much of that attention economy comes down to the hook that you write. And so I'm curious about, how do you go about writing a hook? What's your process? And talk, I guess, about the importance of a really good hook.
Yeah. The hook is so challenging. I still feel like it's a constant work of, a work of art that you're trying to build and trying to stay one step ahead. And it's like people put up these tweet threads where it's like 50 viral hooks, and it's like by the time you've gotten to it, you feel like someone's already using that. So I feel like trying to not immediately copy and paste what other people are doing is something I'm trying to focus on. But I like to test my stuff in different places before I put it up on my TikTok page. So before I spend the time to create a hook or create a video, I'll post that piece of content to LinkedIn. And then if it does really well there, I'll bring it over to Twitter and I'll turn it into a thread. And then if it does pretty well there, in the community of pirates and neurodivergents and trolls, like if it does really well on Twitter, I'm probably in a good place, and it'll probably do pretty well on TikTok as well. And so I'll take my tweet thread, and I just found this new app called Big View, and it does a teleprompter on my screen, which has just been a game changer for me. And so I'll copy the text from that tweet thread, and I'll bring it over into my Big View app, and I'll put that on the screen. And then that is how I create my videos for my TikTok page and my IG, and eventually I'll get back on YouTube here soon. But yeah, that's been my game changer recently, because I know if this tweet thread got over 1,000 views, which is pretty challenging nowadays, and it did pretty well, got a lot of comments and a lot of likes, and it did pretty well on LinkedIn, I can pretty much say for sure it's going to do okay on TikTok. And then I can bring it back, a week and a half later, after it's already been, people aren't even thinking about it anymore, and reshare that exact same copy, but in a video format. So I'm repurposing, but I'm not just copy and pasting, I'm recreating that content into something new. So yeah, that, but in the realm of creating a really great hook, I think it really does come down to you statements. It comes down to being quick and concise about what you're saying. Especially on LinkedIn, it's like no more than one sentence, no more than like 70 to 80 characters. You don't want to go to 3 lines. You just want 1 or 2 lines. And then I think the same thing can be said for TikTok as well. And really giving someone a reason to say, okay, well, what else does he have to say about this? Or what further analysis am I going to need to prove that point? I think one of my most viral videos, if I could even call it viral, on TikTok, I said some outlandish statement that I don't even agree with anymore, but hey, it worked. And I said, TikTok is going to eat YouTube's lunch. And like that statement alone, people are like, okay, buddy, what do you have to say about this? And then it got a ton of views just because people wanted to prove me wrong. And frankly, I probably was wrong, but hey, it was 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. Who knows? The world was different back then. So, and I was really starting to speculate that TikTok was going to just completely outdo YouTube. And now I feel completely different. But hey, we don't always get all
You're
of
not
our
wrong
points
yet.
correctly.
You're not wrong yet. Like maybe history vindicates you. I don't know.
Yeah. But either way, like that statement alone, I think
Mhm.
creating really going out, I call it standing on a soapbox, like you're standing on a soapbox, you got your megaphone, and you're saying something big and provocative. And it's not necessarily offensive or anything like that, but you're standing there and you're saying something big to the world, and you need to back up that statement. And so a lot of people are like, okay, like either you need to prove me right or you need to prove me wrong. And even if it's such a provocative statement that people get angered by it, or it's so against the status quo that they have to say something to it, that's great. You're going to get comments, you're going to get reshares, you're going to get engagement. And so I think there's a lot of things that fall into place when you take that route. That's how I look at hooks, at least.
Right on. I'm hoping people are learning from this, right? As be engaging right off the top. You've been doing this 2 years, and you're still keeping the equipment simple. You've got the wired headset. using your iPhone, I think, for most things. That's evident, but just talk to me about your the equipment that you use. I wrote down Big View, by the way, the teleprompter app that you mentioned. I think that's awesome. I love picking up new details. I think we both use Descript, but talk to me about some of the tools in your kit that you use. We can't all be Stephen Pope, but but what's working for you?
Yeah, that statement is very understated. But yeah, hey, there's a reason he's one of the best. But yeah, I have been using Descript a whole lot recently, ever since I found the Big View app. Once I actually get my setup and I get a camera for 600, $700 or whatever, and I have it set up when I'm doing these, doing these podcast appearances. When that happens, I'll probably start using Descript again because it's just way too useful. And so like when I did do a podcast a while back, I was clipping out content and pulling that and bringing it onto my phone, editing it with CapCut. I just use the simple CapCut app. I could use it on my desktop and get really fun with it, but I'll utilize that. And then I have the Giphy app, so I can pull up my GIFs and I'll bring those into my CapCut and I'll use an overlay. And so if there's like an emotion happening, or if I say something that's really off-putting, I'll do like a GIF of somebody from a TV show, shaking their head and looking up and rolling their eyes, really adding in that personality. Yeah, those are some of the main ones. And then of course the Big View app to do the actual teleprompter on my screen, which is just incredibly helpful. And of course, just my simple Apple headset that came with this. I never realized the sound was so good with this until I started using it for podcasts. And I was like, wow, I sound like I have like a real official mic. And so eventually I'll have one of the nice mics, or even just a simple one to engage with these specific platforms. But I think, keeping it simple is really important, because a lot of people are going to say, I need to spend $600, $700, $800 on a microphone and a camera, and you really don't need to do that. If anything, you can spend less than $100, maybe $50 a month on specific services, that you pay for. Like you probably need a little bit of extra storage on your phone too when you have different videos and different things you're collecting. It just seems like every single week I run out of storage. But yeah, one person was like, "Are you even a content creator if you don't run out of storage every single week?"
Right?
So,
yeah.
Those are some of the main ones I use for video. And then when it comes to writing and scheduling, I use Otter AI to transcribe my meetings. And I use it for all kinds of other stuff too. I have a client I'm working with who's really active on video. And so he'll post like Twitter videos where he's just ranting about a specific subject. And I'll just turn that on my browser, and I'll turn on Otter AI, and I'll transcribe that video, format into the written. And then I'll bring that over into Taplio, which is the scheduler that I use with my clients, because it's just very easy to use. It is a little bit pricier, but it's just way more simple for me to be the ghostwriter on those accounts, so I can just go in and out, and I don't have to do a whole bunch of fun stuff where I have to log into their specific scheduler. I can be the writer connected to their account. And and I mean, of course, ChatGPT, right? Like I'll utilize ChatGPT to help me reformat a post, or say I'm writing something out and it just feels way too wordy, or I'm like reusing the same words way too much. I'll just bring it into ChatGPT and say, hey, rewrite this into a LinkedIn post for me with this specific tone from this specific viewpoint. And then it'll give me a new version that I can take, and I can edit that into something else where it's not using all the same words over and over again. I think as writers and humans, we get caught up in the same lingo. ChatGPT helps me get out of that lingo and get a different lens on a specific subject. So I don't even like using it for research. I just like using it for stuff like that. So, but those are some of the main tools. Yeah.
That's a tip that Steven shared too. Like he takes a transcript and says, make this sound like written English instead of spoken English, and things like that. Like you don't necessarily think about the very obvious applications of these things, right? Like that's handy stuff.
Oh yeah. The research sketches me out, but that stuff, when I know I wrote it and I know where it came from, I'm like, cool, spin it around, give it a new look.
I use it for research stuff too, but usually like if I let that go to print, sorry, I'm so old school. I call it going to print. If I put something up that where I use ChatGPT, I'm transparent about it. I asked ChatGPT to do this, and this is what it said. Like where
Yeah, that's
I don't
smart.
know how the search engines feel about that, but I imagine a reader would respect it. And it's kind of like ChatGPT is objective, right? Particularly if you're asking it something that might be controversial, or like, what is the definition of this term?
Yeah. No,
Uh,
though those insights are so important. I think
yeah,
people get really overwhelmed by ChatGPT and they're like, it can do so much, but it can also do very little stuff that you don't want to do yourself. Like I don't want to rewrite my post again. I'm exhausted. I just wrote it.
yeah.
I feel great about it, but I also don't. And I really would like to see a different version,
Turn this
And
into a tweet thread, or turn this into a
yeah,
or
like it's something you would never want to pay somebody to have to do, or you wouldn't want to have to do yourself. And it's like those monotonous tasks are perfect for robots, Like
let the
let the
robots
robot do that,
do
right?
what they're good at. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's the lesson. And this funny thing too is that, like, 8 weeks ago, would we be having this conversation? It's things happen so fast.
They really
Uh,
do.
when you work with founders, talk to me about your process. That's sorry, the Canadian in me. Process.
Oh,
The
I love
process.
it.
Talk to me about your process when somebody comes on board to work with you. How do you start?
Yeah, so they get started with us. We try to get them into an ideation call right away, or a kickoff call to go over the details, and then get the ideation call scheduled within a week so that I can deliver content to them within 2 weeks max. And so I'll immediately get started with them, get their logins for their LinkedIn account, because honestly, it's just such a hassle to try to direct somebody on how to update their LinkedIn page. So I'll just do it for them. And then it also allows me the ability to check in on their stats and see how things are going. So yeah, a lot of that stuff is like, housekeeping work, but LinkedIn is just such, the platform itself provides you the ability to have a living, breathing resume and a sale, essentially a landing page for your personal brand. And it feels a lot like a website, in my opinion, and you should treat it as such. There's just so much opportunity to put media and expand upon your featured section and really create an amazing brand for people to come to and not be confused by. A lot of times, the founders I work with have never really spent a whole lot of time on LinkedIn, and they certainly don't know what creator mode is. They don't realize that it is a very useful tool to actually drive SEO back to your page. And changing up those 5 hashtags you have on your LinkedIn account is so incredibly impactful. And just changing mine to content marketing has gotten me so many opportunities, and I utilize that hashtag in conjunction with my content too. So there's an additional bump that comes from that. I can't prove that for sure, but I've heard this from a lot of top creators that if you match those two up, you can get a lot. So I'll help them build out their page, build out their featured section, redesign their banner image, work on their headline so that we're actually communicating directly with their target audience, and communicating what it is they intend to do for them. It seems like so many people just want to start creating content, but there are some things that need to be put in place before you get started with that. And so I'll help them design their featured section thumbnails so that if they have a newsletter, or if they have a free product, or if they have a scheduling tool, we are highlighting those. And we're also putting a call to action in the banner image so that it showcases, hey, you want to talk to us? Click the link in my featured section. That, people are much more mindless than we realize, and it's like having those directives along the page to guide them is super helpful. So yeah, that's the first stuff, and then we have our ideation call, and I treat it like a little private keynote conversation, a private Q&A, similar to a podcast or anything else, and I let them just chat away, and I'll have a series of questions. We divide everything up into 4 buckets. You have your macro and your micro when it comes to your niches. So there's the stuff that you are not quite sure about that are more industry specific, more broad, and so like if you're in marketing, digital marketing specifically would be, say, your macro niche. And then you're an email marketer, that's your micro, like you're super specific about this. You're a total nerd. You understand so much about it. That's more of you explaining things to your audience. And the macro is more you creating a conversation with your audience. And then we'll have another bucket for social proof, because at the end of the day, they need to be selling themselves and talking about their results. And that's a huge bucket that there's plenty you can pull from. And then the fourth one is your behind the scenes, your process share. And that's where the personal branding comes out. So, we kind of divide it into 4 different groups so that you're getting a nice mix of content that drives conversation, content that showcases you as a thought leader, content that speaks to your results and drives leads inbound to your page, and then a personal branding bucket where you can showcase the behind the scenes, talk about your team, talk about your family. That way we're not leaving that part out. But obviously we don't want to just be a personal brand. We want to also have all these other things to talk about too. So then I'll go through those and I'll spend about 10 to 20 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes on each one. I'll ask questions in that regard. I'll transcribe that conversation. And then afterwards, I'll go to work over the next 3 to 5 days, building out their written content. And then I get that approved with them. That's usually the most time consuming part, is getting it approved. But once we get it approved, then I send it off in the future to a designer. But right now I'm still the designer, and I'll help build out 8 carousels from that written content into visual. And then we'll start scheduling in Taplio, set a date. And then usually within about 2 weeks of them signing up with us, they're already hitting the ground running. They have their profile and their brand set up, and their content is on autopilot. So that's the goal. And I don't want them to have to work their asses off trying to get this done. I want it to be super simple. I've worked for agencies that just wasted so much of their clients' time, and I hate that. I want it to be efficient and simple and easy to understand. And then, as time goes on, we test and we figure out what works. We double down on the stuff that is working, kind of remove some of the stuff that isn't, integrate pictures and video if we can. I don't actually help them edit the video, but if they have extra stuff, like one of my clients who does all of his short form content, I'll add that in every so often to add that extra detail. Yeah, that's sort of how it goes. And then obviously copywriting, try to write it the way that I think would work best on LinkedIn. With 3+ years of experience, I feel like I know what a good LinkedIn post looks like. So yeah, that's sort of the process. And then we just do that month after month and just continue to focus on what's important for them and continue to orient their brand based on if they're trying to grow their newsletter versus trying to prepare for a masterclass or whatever else it is that they're doing at that time. We try to integrate that into the process.
Right on. Final question, or I got 2 more, but the last one's just to tell us how to get in touch with you. But last question before we close: what advice do you have for founders who want to be their own content creators? What should they be doing to maximize their time? How would you advise them?
I think it goes back to what we were talking about, where it's like remove the barriers of your own process. I had a creative writing teacher back in my early time in college before I finally got my act together, and I actually got a degree that was worth something. But I was in a creative writing class with this lady, and she was just so inspiring. But one of the main things she taught me as a writer was that, we should invite the interruptions. We should allow our creative process to interrupt us throughout our life. And at the end of the day, insights always come when we don't have time for it. And so having a system where you can save those insights in your phone in a way that is not going to require you to carry around a journal or a tape recorder or whatever else, whenever I'm driving is oftentimes when I get my best insights. And so I'll turn on my front facing camera and just start yammering away. Like if I have an insight, it doesn't matter if it's 2 or 3 minutes long, whatever. And so I think a lot of founders would really benefit from just creating a system of their own that it feels like it fits into their daily schedule. They get done with a meeting or whatever, they can go out into the hallway as they're walking to the bathroom. They turn on their video and they start talking while they're walking there, and they save that into their phone, and they build up a nice, rhythm with this. And so they are bringing in like 10, 15 videos per week, and then they can just transcribe that over with Otter AI or anything else they have. There's so many transcription tools. And then having a scheduler of their own, Taplio, Publer, Hypefury, whatever, using a scheduler so that, Hootsuite, Sprout Social. I mean, pick your poison, right? They all do amazing things. They all are incredibly helpful. And then you don't need a social media manager there clicking the buttons for you. And then also looking at a page like LinkedIn, a profile like LinkedIn, and not thinking, oh crap, I got to go network today, and like making such a hassle out of it. Like we all go to the toilet, like we all spend time doing monotonous things throughout our day, waiting for the coffee cup, to be filled, whatever. Go on LinkedIn and make that your networking time, the in-between moments when you're waiting for something. So I think removing the excuses and just, if you don't want to hire a ghostwriter and you want to bootstrap it yourself, more power to you. I think a lot of founders are used to that kind of mentality. And if that's the case, just make your system work like none other throughout your day-to-day life. And then you don't have to stress about if your content's going out, you already know it's in your scheduler. And then, setting like a time on the weekends when like we all like to fancy ourselves as workaholics and we're, never not working, but it's like, take 1 hour, take 2 hours on the weekend and just make that your creative time block, or during the week or whatever else, and go through those videos, transcribe them, bring them over to your scheduler, make it look beautiful, and then add stuff in as time goes on. But start with one, and then move to Twitter, and then move to TikTok or whatever else, and have fun with it. If you're sharing your personal story, it also becomes an outlet for yourself, and you start to feel really good doing it. And those good feelings help to inform what else you're doing, and give you great ideas and give you great feedback. So it's not just about growing the business at that point; it's also a way for you to express yourself. And I think that's a part that a lot of people leave out. So yeah.
Beauty. Hey, Daniel Kading, last question is, if anybody wants to follow you or connect with you, where do they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Daniel Kading, Kading. I got my orange picture. Feel free to find me there. I'm always on LinkedIn. And then I have the same handle on all of my other pages. So Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, YouTube as well, at Brand with Dan, no special spelling, same orange picture. If you're on any one of those platforms, feel free to reach out to me, shoot me a DM if you have any questions. I'm a community builder. I love to help people. And if you just have a random insight you want to share with me, feel free to do that, or bombard my post with some hilarious GIFs. I'm always down with that too. But yeah, if you want to find me, those are the locations. I'm still working on getting my new website set up here in the near future. But until then, those are the best places you can find me. And let me know if you need a good ghostwriter that's got good vibes and is willing to get really creative and try to bring your brand to life. So yeah.
Right on. And I highly recommend following Dan on TikTok. His stuff is great. And as I say, I see it every time. It's like the algorithm knows that I want to be watching your stuff because you're always there. Thanks very much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. You'll start seeing these clips trickling out on LinkedIn and TikTok in no time.
I look forward to it. I appreciate you bringing me on. I'm glad we could do this so last minute and make it work. So
thanks, man.
Appreciate you.
All right. Take care, dude.
Thank you. Bye-bye. You too.